make video?
Yeah, bro.
Let's go, boys. It's your boy Psycho, and welcome back to 26-year-old loser tries not to lonely chat. It's book review. Any good book review? Do you remember this one? It's been like 5 years since my last one. If you tuned into my last video, you probably know that I joined a book club. Thank you, Mariku, Bruna, and Eleni for welcoming me. It has been a lot of fun. I have enjoyed getting back into reading, and I started in December. I'll be talking about the book that we read, which was Cosmos by Carl Sagan. What a good book. It's a very weird book to get me properly back into reading for the first time because it's first of all a non-fiction. Usually I need to have the aid of a fantasy kind of world to help me get my imagination going because I find like non-fiction books can be mentally taxing, but this book did something very interesting being a science book that really helped me get into it like a lot, and I'll talk about it a bit now. But yeah, just a quick little details about the book. New York Times calls it enticing, imaginative, readable, I guess as a book should be, and iridescent, showing luminous colours that seem to change when seen from different angles. I guess kind of, yeah, sure. And it goes into a little bit about spacecraft missions to nearby planets, the Library of Ancient Alexandria, the human brain, hieroglyphs, the origin of life, the death of the sun, the evolution of galaxies, and the origins of matter, suns, and worlds. Now, the book seems to be, to me, split into two different kinds of ways of thinking when it comes to science. It comes to the very textbookish nature of science, which basically tells you about stuff like the human brain or how we think life, originated, that kind of stuff. Scientists have been debating for years at this point, and we have a pretty solid idea on how we think it's happened now. But for me, the best parts of this book is the philosophical side, which is really interesting to say. Now, I'm not super I love the concept of philosophy and I want to employ it more in my life, but I'm not an expert. But the way that it's able to mesh philosophy and religion and science into one, that makes me be proud of the religion I have as well as the scientific beliefs I have. It's something I didn't think was possible, and it's apparently very possible. You just have to read this book. Two parts of the book that I personally enjoyed, I'm going to talk about now, is the explanation of miracles. It's a pretty simple concept because people want to know, how does science explain miracles? If you look at biblical miracles or just miracles in nature, how would you explain it? The example given in the book are samurai crabs. I'm going to read a little bit. Hold on if I can find it. Where did I find about samurai crabs? The fishermen say I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, by the way, Haiki samurai wander the bottoms of the inland sea still, in the form of crabs. There are crabs to be found here with curious markings on their backs, patterns and indentations that disturbingly resemble the face of a samurai. How do these crabs in Japanese waters have the face of a samurai? And there's so many of them. Is it destiny? That the samurai is so upheld in the nature of Japan that the creatures that inhabit the sea have samurai indentations on them? And the answer is pretty simple. Evolution. That's basically all it is, and it's so simple. It talks about how the evolution of all species on our planet is a huge, a planet-wide trial and error process. An organism that's born will always have a defect of some kind, if not one, then multiple. Sometimes so tiny and unnoticeable that we don't even realize two things could basically look the same. But sometimes the defects are so much that it can show in maybe the way an organism is able to respire or the way that it's able to live without sunlight or something like that. And eventually an organism will develop with such a defect that it'll actually give it a positive advantage in the environment it lives in. So if we were to say something let's say that there's a river flowing, a shallow river, very shallow, like a stream basically, and there was a rock surface underneath, but there was running water on top. And let's say that there's an organism that doesn't have grippy feet, right? It will struggle every now and then to cross, and it crosses, and then it has kids, and then those kids struggle to get across. But a big chunk of the offspring that's born will slip on that stream, crack its head on the rocks, and die. Right? And that keeps the level of that species at bay. It can't reproduce a lot because every time they have to cross this stream as part of its instinct, too many of them slip in the water, crack their head on the rock, and die. But eventually, one of them is born with a defect that allows it to have grippier feet, and it doesn't slip, right? Now, this organism is going off and it's doing its thing, as are its brothers and sisters. They keep crossing. Eventually, they all cross the river so many times that all of them slip on the rock and die, except for the one with grippy feet, right? And then that one is the only one living to have offspring, to have children. And then being the child of this organism with the grippy feet, the offspring also has it, until eventually the entire species species has now got grippy feet because it's all from that one ancestor who had it in the first place. The samurai crabs that I explored here, it's a very simple explanation. There was a crab that had a defect, which was indentation in the skin that just happened to look like samurai. There was one. A big coincidence, like a big universal, like how the hell did it happen? But the fact there was one. And maybe a Japanese fisherman catches that crab, sees a marking that looks suspiciously like samurai, and therefore doesn't eat it. Instead, he throws it back into the sea. But he keeps all the other crabs that he's fished up. So eventually, all the crabs are consumed except for this one that has a samurai indentation on its back. And then that crab breeds, and then its children has, the same indentation on the back until the entire species line is just the samurai crab. And I thought that is so cool. That's how you get samurai crabs. And now I really, really want to have a samurai crab. A perspective on things that explain the stuff that we know. Like, we know what evolution is, but you could apply it to anything and it would make sense. It's all about how the common ancestor influenced the generations to come, and it just offers a good perception on how to influence the future because of this selection process that can naturally occur. That is just really cool. And the other thing, I said two things, is one particular scientist, I'm going to use the word scientist, it talks about, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Johann Kepler. It might seem naive of me to say, but I am Johann Kepler. I am. I'm reading this stuff. I'm like, this guy's me. Hold on, if I can find the passage. No, I don't want to learn about dragon pearls. Johann Kepler was born in Germany in 1571 and sent as a boy to the Protestant seminary school in the provincial town of Marlborough. Kepler, stubborn, intelligent, and fiercely independent, suffered 2 friendless years in bleak Marlborough. 2 friendless years? 2 friendless years at uni. That was me. I didn't make friends until my 3rd year at uni. Becoming isolated and withdrawn. That's me. Johann Kepler is me. Hold on a second. His thought devoted to his imagined unworthiness in the eyes of God. This is me. This guy is me. This guy, I low-key think I'm gonna grow up to be Johann Kepler and then go back in time to then make my name into this book. It's me. It's insane. Kepler's God was the creative power of the cosmos. The boy's curiosity conquered his fear. He wished to learn the eschatology of the world. He dared to contemplate the mind of God. He was later to write, geometry existed before the creation. It is co-eternal with the mind of God. Geometry provided God with a model for the creation. Geometry is God himself. A natural part of the way that I'm going to be talking about things in any videos to come, especially when I start talking about serious topics like science and personal beliefs and whatever, religion is going to play a big part. The book that I'm writing right now, religion has a big part, because I kind of feel like there's this misconception that religion and science don't go hand in hand, and especially today with the misconception of religion being basically a blind man's path, something for the average person to just follow without having to think. When employed as a philosophy and binding it to things like science, it offers a unique perspective that otherwise would just leave you clouded in your judgment. When people think of God, they like to think of a big bearded guy in the sky, right? But it's this power, the way I see it, in the universe that allows everything to exist. And maybe mine's a little bit more traditional than the way that Johann Kepler sees it. It's still a very interesting concept. The idea that numbers, you can't argue with numbers, okay? The concept of, I see this book is like a very, very deep navy blue, but with my brain and my eyes, are you seeing the same color I am? Maybe you've grown up your whole life seeing what I think is blue as yellow, but because you've seen it as blue your whole life, you think it's blue. But really, if I was to enter your brain and use your eyes to see this book, I might be like, wait a minute, that's not blue, that's yellow, right? But for you it's blue. I know it's a bit of a weird thing to say, but the idea is we'll never know what other people see exactly because we'll never be inside their brain. So red might not be red for everyone, blue might not be blue for everyone, but 1 + 1 is 2. And I'm not going to go into those YouTube videos that say, oh, 1 + 1 is 3 and here's how you prove it. We're talking fundamental. You have 1, is 2. Yeah, makes sense? You can't argue with the numbers. So the idea that you can basically see God through the geometry of the universe, the idea that you can measure how far a star is just based on the angles and stuff of the parallax angles of where the Earth is at its point in the orbit of our solar system. It gives you that awareness that it's such an intricate design that there's got to be a power behind it. Now I know that sounds super there's a spinning wheel, somebody must be using it kind of thing, I don't think the universe came out of nowhere. It's not really the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that the universe is so big and so complicated that it takes this big giant universal level force to have it be as expansive as it is. And that's how the book explains the idea of Kepler trying to find his worthiness in the eyes of God by being able to figure out how the universe works. Basically, it's like a giant task that's been given, and a divine task at that. I really, really love this book. Thank you, Bruna, for suggesting it. But I will now move on to the negatives part of the book, at least from my perspective. It did get a bit too textbook-like something your university teacher would ask you to study. I like the idea of the shores of the cosmic ocean, one voice in the cosmic fugue, the harmony of worlds. And then I thought, heaven and hell. Can you see that? Oh, that heaven and hell. That sounds like interesting. Is it going to talk about the universal possibility of a heaven and hell? But really, it was just talking about how living on like Venus would be very, very bad for us, just because of how hot it would be and how like toxic the environment would be and all that kind of stuff. It was more just like a catchy title than anything else. And then it starts talking about the lives of stars. Now and when it comes to the lives of stars and how stars, the whole red giant, the big supernova thing, black hole stuff, you've seen it in the documentaries. When I first got into my love for science, it was always how much I love black holes. So I just watched a whole bunch of documentaries on Netflix. So I kind of know everything there is to know just on a layman basis. And I kind of felt like the beginning of the book did trigger me to look at science in a philosophical way, which allows me to be able to do something that nobody up until now has been able to get me to do, and that is mesh religion, philosophy and science before it started going full on science at the end, right? It offered no new perspective, but the same kind of ones that you've been brought up to see, I guess. But having said that, still such a good book to read. I definitely recommend this book. I can't give it too high a rating just because there were too many chapters that have that science problem that I was talking about, and I wish, I guess the first three chapters, I wish there was more of that throughout the book, and I just kind of felt like there wasn't. The book is very, very good to read if it's in bites. There are 13 traditional chapters if you don't include the introduction, and you should read one chapter a day. Don't do what I did, where I had a whole 30 days to read this book and I ended up cramming the last half in about 4 days, which maybe impacted how much I liked those last couple of chapters because I just did it in two bigger chunks at a time. But I did give the book my best effort, especially it was considering being my first time jumping back into the reading thing, and I enjoyed it. Was the book any good? I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I think that if it had more of the stuff that I enjoyed at the beginning, at least if half the book was that, it would definitely bump it up to 4 out of 5. If it was less like a textbooky kind of feel at the end, then it definitely would be a 5 out of 5 book for me, but I'll give it a 3 out of 5. It was a solid book, very entertaining to read. Definitely pick this up. Carl Sagan he offers such a unique perspective that it borders on like a Jordan B. Peterson kind of like breaking things down to their fundamental, and this was an enjoyable read. Thank you, Blue Book Club, for recommending this book. I have also finished Replay by Ken Grimwood way ahead of time. This was meant to be finished by the end of January. It is, as of recording, it's the 22nd, and I had finished this last week, and this will be the book that I'll be talking about next month. This has been a very, very fun couple of weeks in terms of reading. I can feel like myself getting back into reading, and up until now I've absolutely hated the fact that I haven't been able to get into it, but I'm getting back into it. I'm really, really excited, and I can't wait to talk about Replay next month, and you'll see why. That's the end of the video. Smack up the like button, smash down the subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Roll the credits.